Bitcoin is a lifeline to people in countries with really poor stewardship of their economy.
Mike Novogratz, former partner and president of Fortress Investment Group, is the CEO and creator of Galaxy Digital. His company offers a broad range of financial solutions spanning the ecosystem of digital assets to institutional investors and retail clients. Today, Novogratz talks about his predictions for Bitcoin through 2022 and beyond, as well as his thoughts on the geopolitical context of cryptocurrency and how rate increases will impact the market. In addition to the market uncertainties, Novogratz claims that at least 2 additional price increases for Bitcoin are anticipated in 2022. He talks about bringing individuals into the neighborhood when their house is on fire is difficult. According to Novogratz, investors are apprehensive. Make sure to watch till the end of the video to hear Mike Novogratz's prediction for Bitcoin in the coming months. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy the content we do here on this channel. Let's get right into the video.
The problem with cryptocurrency is that you can use it to circumvent these sanctions. On the other hand, people in the community are saying, that's the point, right? We don't want government censorship to be able to take away our property.
So let's talk big and small. There is zero chance the Russian government can use cryptocurrencies to circumvent. Right? We're regulated by 25 different agencies, Galaxy. And I'm sure, FTX and Binance and the others have just as many. And so almost all crypto moves through exchanges. Those exchanges have KYC AML processes, just like TradeFi exchanges. Plus, Bitcoin is a public blockchain. Way back we hired Mike Morrell, who had run the CIA, we, Galaxy, and a few other companies, to do a study on Bitcoin. And he did like a 10 weeks exhaustive study with the security agencies, with the 3-letter agencies, with crypto companies. And he came up with a thesis that if you were going to design a trap to catch criminals, it would look a lot like the Bitcoin blockchain. And so it's just, Elizabeth Warren is just wrong when she thinks you can use Bitcoin for the Russia to escape sanctions. And we're looking at it the wrong way. The Russian ruble has depreciated over 90% in the last 10 years. Just this year alone, I think high to low is like 65%. The Turkish lira did the same. Bitcoin is a lifeline to people in countries with really poor stewardship of their economy. And we should be thrilled that Russians can get some of their money in Bitcoin so they're not completely broke holding worthless rubles. Let's say the dollar might never be the same, right? I mean, I think the biggest thing that's happened in the last 10 years in lots of ways, maybe longer, is when Europe and the US said, hey, Russia, those reserves that you thought were yours, they're not really your reserves. So what does that mean? It means the dollar or treasuries as a risk-free asset isn't so risk-free. It's not risk-free if you're Russian, and maybe if you're Chinese, you're like, it might not be risk-free either. And so I think we're entering in a world that's unknown, where people are going to struggle to figure out what is the reserve currency. The U.S. isn't going away, right? The dollar's not going away, but it's not going to be the sole place. And so I think you're going to see this hodgepodge of assets. Gold, certainly digital assets are going to be part of that bucket. The whole world's not going to flip to Bitcoin overnight, but you're going to see more and more people say, I want to have some of my money outside of the sovereign. Right? I think Bitcoin has this really beautiful lane of being digital gold or a store of value. Everyone has a human right to have the fruits of their labor stored somewhere. And if you don't trust your government's currency, traditionally we put it in diamonds or gold. This is the first really digital version of that. And so I think that's Bitcoin's use case. Now listen, there's also a lot of other digital assets. There's digital stable coins or digital dollars or euros. There's things, Ethereum, digital networks, NFTs, right? And so the revolution that's happening isn't just in one lane. But I think for Bitcoin, it really is a place you store value. It all comes down to who controls them. And so if you look at the Chinese version, where it's a blockchain of one, right? It's complete, total transparency into every transaction you do. So you're giving up complete privacy, right? The version that we're pushing for, the blockchain community here in the US, what Brian Brooks pushed when he was the head of the OCC, was private companies running on a public blockchain, but those assets backed by assets held at Fed banks, right? So it's where your privacy goes. You don't want your country knowing every last purchase you made. So where do we care about privacy? And this sounds nuanced, but it is the single most important part of understanding how important this fight of CBDCs is.
A lot of the haters will bring up how positively Bitcoin is correlated with stocks as a way to say, hey, that's not a haven, that's not an inflation hedge. How do you answer to that?
I think bald mics think alike to start with. Listen, Bitcoin went up a lot last year on this story of the Fed printing money forever. That's what pushed all risk assets up, right? We had this unbelievable amount of liquidity. And it came off because the Fed, Chairman Powell finally said, hey, I got to take this more seriously than I've been taking it, and I'm going to get hawkish. We're starting to see a little bit of a breakdown. I don't think Bitcoin can rally aggressively until we get a pause. And I would tell you that because Bitcoin's a narrative story. It's bringing people into a community. There are 150 million people into that community. Most are staying in it. Right? That's the 8th biggest country in the world. It's bigger than Russia. So Bitcoin holders are a bigger country if you think it's sovereignty than Russia. But to bring new people in, it's hard when their house is on fire. And right now, if you talk to any investor, Chinese stocks are cratering, tech stocks are cratering. Their mindset isn't like, let me see where I can find more risk. And so, well, we're going to hit a pause. The war will end. Let's, pray to God. The Fed will go and we'll start saying, hey, we've priced in the Fed. And once markets hit some equilibrium, I think you're going to see the narrative really take off.
So where would you set a target for year end this year and 5 years out?
Great question. Listen, I think, like the other bald mic, the NASDAQ has further to go to the downside this year. I think literally the Fed hasn't even started hiking rates. They haven't started pulling liquidity from the system. And so I've the whole year thought we'd be a 30,000, 50,000 range in Bitcoin. Risk to the upside, not the downside. But I think, 5 years out, if Bitcoin's not at 500,000, I'm wrong on the adoption cycle, right? We see an adoption cycle that accelerates. Bitcoin grew so much faster last year, crypto grew, than the internet did its best years in the 90s. I see this going viral everywhere, if it's in the Mideast or in pension funds in the United States, all getting ready to participate.
We have heard a number of mayors push for this, and really since the beginning, there's been this kind of egalitarian, obviously libertarian feeling in the Bitcoin community. You mentioned 150 million people have now adopted it.
When I look at young versus old, right, this is a generational move. I cheekily say I identify as Gen Z. It's because it's a revolution of young people who looked up and said, I don't like the way the world's looking, right? I'm losing faith, I'm losing trust. And we see trust breaking down everywhere. And so I think if you looked at young versus old, there's a much bigger representation in young.
Mike, what about the idea that Bitcoin can be the great equalizer? If there's going to be a parallel financial system being created via new technology, do you have any evidence that it could be a more equal system?
Well, crypto gives everybody equal access, right? Anybody can participate in the Bitcoin network. I don't need to have a certain level of wealth. I don't need to be in a private equity or a venture fund. I can go on and I can participate. I can build on it. I can invest in it. If regulation doesn't get better in the United States, right? SEC has been slow and they've been regulating by enforcement, not by clarity. The crypto community was worried. We have had nothing but bad vibe out of Elizabeth Warren, who has a whole lot of say. The Gensler SEC has been, like I said, regulating via enforcement and not clarity. And there's been a lot of nervousness around this. And so we were really pleased. It sets a framework to say, hey, let's make sure we understand this is a real industry America needs to be competitive at, that stablecoins is the most important thing. And so let's hope they follow up that way. I do think the politics have shifted, right? Even on the Democratic side, it's no longer anti-crypto. It's like, hold on, there are a lot of crypto voters.
The fact that Bitcoin is not an inflation hedge is one of the frequent arguments made by detractors in recent months. People have also discussed how Bitcoin and the stock market appear to be correlated. In fact, a lot of industry experts have compared Bitcoin to a standard tech stock. Novogratz says this is merely conjecture, and the issue the asset is currently having affects all other significant assets as well. While not optimistic about 2022, the businessman and investor anticipates that the asset will remain valued between $30,000 and $50,000 before the end of the year. What do you think about Mike Novogratz's prediction for Bitcoin? Comment down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. This is Library of Wealth. We'll see you in the next video.